All right, welcome back to the Real Estate Huddle. We're here at episode 43 now, and we're going to talk about how to properly manage your money like the wealthy do. And just give you a few tips. Hopefully some of this stuff will come in handy, and we hope, right, that you'll be able to get in a position where you can do what we feel is the best investment over time, which is buying real estate here in the United States, especially in Colorado, where we live, where we help people all the time. And to be able to do that, you got to have a down payment. You got to, plan accordingly and do some great things. So today we're just going to talk about some tips and tricks of how to organize yourself properly and how to get there, whether it's a couple months down the road or a few months down the road on how to get to that point. And not just for buying homes, but just to have success financially in your life and do some great things so that you can, have that freedom that you want and also bless other people's lives down the road. So let's kick it off. I know, you guys have had some experience in this personally. Everyone has, right? We all deal with money. One of the biggest things we learn is that we get habits from our parents, right? Or from people that we know, maybe an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent that has strong opinions about money or has certain ways that they treat money and that sort of a thing. So did anybody have a house where it was just like you had like one philosophy of money here and another like completely different philosophy, or were your parents kind of aligned in what they thought about money?
I think in my experience, my dad was like the moneymaker, and my dad kind of like made the financial decisions, and my mom was more of like a follower. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if other people can relate to that. Yeah.
She went along with it and was like, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
I agree.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Supportive. We call that supportive.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
I'd say both my parents were pretty similar. My mom's from like rural Tennessee. My dad was a farm boy in Ohio. So they both grew up not so wealthy. Mm-hmm. So they still maintained kind of that frugality. Yeah. I'd say the main difference is my mom just loves saving money, however that may be, even if it's inconvenient.
Yeah.
And my dad is like, I will spend money if it is convenient and means I don't have to tile my own kitchen or like whatever. So that was kind of the DIY was where they split. But
interesting.
Well, all relationships tend to have two different personalities. So there's the saver and the spender. Right. And everyone kind of breaks into that category. Sometimes that can change based on what the actual topic is. Right. Some people love experiences, but they hate, material goods. Right. So material goods, they're the savers. So I think it's kind of interesting to see the dynamics of the personalities. But for the most part, you can kind of broad brush most people into those categories. So
definitely. Yeah. No, and my parents, like my mom was the daughter of a dairy farmer. And, so they were all about just like hard work, saving money, like not a whole lot of, money to go around in their house, so she was a saver and also loves to keep things like in the fridge, leftovers for way too long until they get moldy, like that.
Until they become science experiments.
Yes. And her mom, my grandma's even worse. Like when we go to her house, there's always something green in the fridge that shouldn't be green.
She's been saving it just for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, didn't want to throw it away. Just can't throw those things away.
Can't leave grandma's house hungry.
Exactly. And then my dad, like his mom passed away when he was 16, and his dad, drove school buses, didn't, make a ton of money either. So neither one of them came from like a lot of money. And so they really had to, like, when they came together, my dad started in real estate back in 1983. He became very structured and organized of how he went about things, as far as money goes. And my dad's more the spender in our house because I think he's like taken that, like, I didn't have this growing up. And so I want to live life and enjoy nice things and that sort of a thing and make good money. And I think my mom's more of like, do we have to do that? Is this necessary? Honey, do we have, do we really need season tickets to the Rockies? I don't know. I don't even like baseball.
Well, not this season.
It's like those things where for my dad, it's like, no, I'm gonna buy, a quarter a season. I'm gonna give it out to clients, and he sees it as an investment, sort of a thing. So different philosophies as far as that goes, but they've learned because of how they've used money. They've been able to do very well for themselves, and I think balance each other out in some ways too. So I've learned a lot from my parents and how they've done things and tried to do things, kind of in a similar manner as far as that goes. And I still call my dad all the time and ask him questions about money, about how he does things for taxes, for just how he organizes himself with his bank accounts, with his investments, stuff like that. So it's kind of like a cheat to have a great mentor, right? That can help you through some of that stuff. And if you don't have that as a parent, I think it's really important to find that person and figure it out, whether it's an uncle, aunt. If you see someone that's doing well, they may not actually be doing well, right? Because a lot of
they might
money
be spender.
is borrowed.
The people that you actually think are very wealthy are typically the people that are flaunting it. And if you go into the actual depths of their finances, a lot of times you'll find out that that's not truly the case. They're surrounded in a pile of debt, and they're just living paycheck to paycheck. And if their water heater went out, they would have to borrow money to make it repair it.
Like they say in Texas, right? Big hat, no cattle.
Yep, exactly. So that's one thing. So, but you've also seen people that are jeans and a t-shirt, and they may have multi-million-dollar net worth, right? Who was the founder of Amazon? They were doing an interview with him, and he's driving a '93 Honda Accord.
What?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
So think about someone who's one of the wealthiest people out there, and he's driving a Honda, right? So if you look at the average. I do a lot of, I didn't have a lot of that example growing up as a kid for the financial literacy and different things like that. So I took some time to try and, I faced some hard times when I had got after college and whatever else, so I had to learn this very quickly. So I took some time, learned a lot of things, and got a quick education on it. And I've learned very quickly that the image is one thing and the reality is something different, right?
Totally. Yeah.
But no, it's been interesting to see that disparity between the people that appear rich, right? So that's why I guess I really love automotive stuff, but then people come up with a $500,000 car. I'm like, okay, that's cool.
Well,
but
yeah,
they got to put it in perspective. I'm like, if I had $500,000, I don't know if I'd be buying that car, right? So
a depreciating asset.
Anything with wheels, right? So, and
that would be a huge thing for me that you're looking for, right? Is don't look for material things that people have when you're looking for your mentor that's going to help you with money.
Right.
Yes.
Look for people that own investments, that own businesses, that own stuff like that they've figured out how to put money into a structure that is making more money for them and doing that sort of thing rather than just, man, they got a sweet house and a sweet car, and because that stuff is where it could be inflated. It could be not real. It could be real, but maybe it's not.
You won't know unless you actually ask the question, and sometimes that's hard to ask. So, but
totally.
Some of the family friends that I have dealt with, they're retired at 45 because they were working and they were very high up in the C-suite of their company, but being able to step away from that and invest in their family, and also know that for his own health, to be able to take care of that. And I'm like, for someone to retire at 45, you have to be financially very well off and have to be very frugal. And it was very eye-opening for me to be able to see that modeled and be like, wow, okay, what would it take to be able to get there? So, and that advice rang a little bit more true than, the person with the really fancy car that just was flashy and had the Rolex on and everything else, but may not, it's all borrowed money or paying 25% interest on a credit card for that material good. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, some friends and I were talking about, have you guys seen Broke, the new documentary about pro athletes?
Yes, I have.
Okay,
Super
so
interesting.
we were talking about that a little bit, and the main crux of it is these pro athletes, you're a young kid without, you were talking about, financial literacy.
Yep.
They come into this windfall where they have a large contract and they're making a lot of money, and then they increase their spending accordingly.
Yep.
So if you're around this guy, he has a Rolls Royce and he's wearing a diamond grill and he has all these chains, and so you're like, oh, that guy's loaded, he's set.
Yep.
But they don't realize, hey man, this 2-year contract might be all the money you ever get for the sport you dedicated your life to, and you need that money for the rest. And I think an interesting connection is a lot of people don't think about it the same way with the way that they make money, but your career, while it might not be 2 years in the NBA, whatever money you can make while you're in that working phase of your life you need to treat with financial literacy so that in like the later stages of your life, you have a retirement set up, you have things going for you. So living below your means, regardless of if you're a superstar athlete or if you work at Taco Bell, I think it's important for everybody if you're looking long term.
Yep. Well, it's the same thing with lottery winners, and the NFL stands for not for long, right? So that's and the people that understand that have a longer term perspective of things. We talked the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest. It's like, oh, okay, so you can get there, and I think that's an interesting philosophy that people who have that long term view versus the people that are the materialistic stuff. And I had a big change in my life where I was all about the latest fad and whatever TV and, trying when I had, working as an engineer, I'm like, oh, I got a good income. I can do this. And then I just changed perspective of, well, that TV's $3,000, but that one's $600. What do I get for that extra? It just wasn't worth it to me to spend that extra money. So it's like I could do something better with that. Mm-hmm. So when you start looking at the opportunity costs of everything, and that's, I think, the interesting shift that I've seen in my mentality as well. And I don't know if it's just getting older or if it's just trying to see the more responsibility for the future and the growth. And just like kind of what you had talked about with your dad and your different investments and stuff like that. Yeah. That wasn't something that was really strongly modeled for me. And, my dad grew up where it was a pension, and my mom didn't work outside the home for a very long period of time, and she had to recoup later on after my parents got divorced. So that was a challenge for him. So I didn't have the greatest example. So you've got that good example, but I've had to be a quick study of one.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that have great examples, right? But they don't really get taught. Right? They don't really take the time to learn it.
Yeah, it's not taught in schools.
Yep.
Right? Mm-hmm. There's nothing in schools that teaches you about how to be savvy with your money for taxes.
Yep.
Right? Not because we don't want to pay our fair share, but there's some people that they could do the exact same thing that they're doing with a different corporate structure or different entity structure and actually save on taxes and bring more home. Yep. Little things like that, tax avoidance and different things like that. So that stuff isn't really taught very well. Just the basics of budgeting, like just living below your means and what does it mean to be on a budget. And the rainy day fund that grandpa and grandma always used to take care of, right? That's a thing of the past. Like 70% of the people can't handle $1,000 emergency in cash, right? So, and that's a pretty scary thing because especially if you're a homeowner or you own a car, right? And you could have tires, you could have like all sorts of little things that could go out and it'll be $1,000 in a heartbeat. So, that's scary.
It is interesting, right? So like a couple other really good principles to think about and to consider is if you are self-employed, like Brock mentioned, talk to your CPA about being incorporated in some way or form, right? So you can avoid self-employment tax. So that is something you should talk to a tax expert about because we aren't one. But then another thing is just being organized. Like every time you get paid, there should be a system, right, that happens, and preferably automated system that happens every time money comes in, right? And so that typically, like the way that a lot of people in our industry and that are like own businesses that they don't have W-2 income, that like it's taken out of their money every time it comes in automatically by their employer, right? If you have to actually plan this and think about it, have buckets, right? Different accounts that you can transfer that money to or that it just goes into. And I think that's huge. Like whatever your tax rate is, that should be going into the tax account, right? Every time you get paid, make sure that is being prepared so that you're ready and you don't freak out on, April 15th, whatever day it is, right? That tax day ends up being. And so that's a big one. And then if you're running a business or self-employed, anything like that, you've got to have a business account, right? That money's going into, and you know what percentage of your revenue is dedicated to business expenses, right? So that is running the business through that fund, right? And then you've got a personal account as well that your personal expenses are. And I label all these the people that like my bank laugh at me when I go in because they're like, do you want the 40% one or the 20% one? Like the 40% one, and that's just like I live on 40% of what I make. Like that's what I've done for years. Right. And so that's like Jackson's point, to live with less than what you make, unlike Warren Sapp and Allen Iverson and a bunch of these big athletes, right, that have gone broke after making $180 million in like 5 years.
Yeah, they have
Like,
no retirement. They're an professional athlete. They get hurt.
Right.
Now they are drowning in,
Yeah.
all these financial decisions
The
that they
Shaq
made.
story when
and-
he first got into the NBA is a pretty comical one if you ever want to listen to that. So how he just started spending more, and it's like he didn't realize it. So when it comes to planning with your money and stuff, the quote that I have always really appreciated comes from Dave Ramsey. He said, "A budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went." Mm-hmm. And I think that's been really key, because a lot of people, I've helped with some financial coaching and some other things. And the first thing I always do is look back at the last 6 months, because you always got to wonder where it went first to figure out where it's going to go. And once you add that up and you realize, oh, I spent $3,000 on takeout food or just restaurants last month. Well, that's an easy one to cut, right? So those are the types of things where if you put that philosophy in there, it can be a lot more intentional about it. So,
And that kind of can help, like, in making a budget of, like, how much am I spending on food? How much, if you don't know yet, kind of like what Tom Ferry is saying, right? And then you can see, oh, this is where I can cut back this, and maybe put a pool of, I'm going to spend this amount on takeout food. I'm going to spend this amount on,
yep.
So
whatever. Back in the day when I was in school, they taught us how to balance a checkbook, where you got the statement at the end of, each month they got a paper statement, and you had to go through your check register and make sure all the numbers added up and your balance was the same as what they're saying is the balance was. That's a forgotten art nowadays. Now it's just, I check on the app and I look at the balance and I'm good, but that doesn't actually reconcile the actual account. Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting technique that has gone away. So
Totally. Well, another really key concept to know if you want to create wealth and get out of a hole, especially, is understanding the difference between good debt and bad debt, right? There's good debt, which would be like, well, let's start with bad debt. There's bad debt, which would be like paying 17 to 25% on a credit card, right? That's bad debt. That is not smart.
a $500,000 car.
Yes.
You guys are talking about.
Huge car payment, right? When you don't really need it. If you can't pay for it in cash, like that would be bad debt. But good debt would be, mortgage on a house that you can write off your interest, and you can, do certain things with that help save you taxes and give you a place to live, a shelter where you're not paying 100% of your shelter expense to the landlord. Like, that is a good expense and a healthy one.
And it controls your shelter costs over a long period of time. It fixes it. So as rents increase, your mortgage payment essentially stays the same minus taxes and insurance. So that's a good debt.
Yep.
So, and you can write that off.
Absolutely.
With all your interests. So.
And some of the naysayers will say, well, but what if the market goes down, right? Or what if it becomes more expensive with interest rates and stuff? Well, keep in mind, like, rents go up like 3.5% per year on average, right? And there's been a lot of economic experts that have said that nothing will be hit harder by inflation than rent prices. And we've seen that over the last 5 years. Like, it's gone up tremendously. And so rent hasn't gotten any cheaper. Unfortunately, payments on homes haven't either. But when you're paying yourself back a portion of that home and you're writing off the interest and your closing costs and everything, like there's a lot of positives as far as owning a home and seeing that value grow over time. So buying a house is one of the most sound ways that you can build wealth for the future. But all of these steps really lead up to that, right? To get you to that point. And
you have to have your finances in order to buy a house.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's good to play the long game, kind of what you're talking about. I feel like, with these athletes, they're playing the short game, and it's cool and fun for a short period of time, and then it's over. And I think, purchasing a house is kind of a long game, but I think the outcome is definitely more worth it than renting and then kind of being stuck renting.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of where you're at.
Yep. You're rewarded by being a decision maker, by committing to something. Mm-hmm. You're committing to an area, a plot of land, and saying, I'm going to own this piece of land and I'm going to live here for a while, right? You're rewarded for that. There are definite rewards that come where when you, part of the reason why so many people struggle in life and don't have success financially and in other ways is lack of commitment and indecision, right? It's the biggest killer of production and execution.
They're not intentional.
Yep. And so a lot of people don't realize that, but that commitment level of, and some of the people we talk to just have that, right? When we talk to them for the first time, they're like, oh yeah, no, we know exactly what we want. We're here. We're going to be here for this long. At least, we want to make sure that we own a home and, you get some roots, in this part of town. So that's great. But other people are like, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I'm not sure. And those are the people we talk to 6 years later, and they're still renting. Then they paid about $250,000 towards rent over the last 6 years.
Or they could have made that in equity if they would have purchased already.
It would have been at least $100,000 in equity. At least. Yeah. That's a low number, right? As far as their net worth difference between that and this. And that's it's just a fact. So it's crazy, how much commitment level really produces money and net worth over time.
So I wanted to elaborate a little bit more on the process, everything that's very process driven and having things automated. So Ramsey Solutions did a survey of a whole bunch of millionaires, and they went and looked at what they attribute their success to and what their career was. And I can really take a big inference from their career to where things in their career actually benefit them. So I don't remember the large amount of, I think it was over 100,000 people, or it was a very large survey that they did this on. So don't quote me on the numbers, but they said the top 5 careers when it came to being a millionaire: engineer, accountant, teacher, management, and attorney.
That's crazy.
Which I think is funny, but if you think about all of those careers are very process driven and kind of very automated. Engineering, there's certain principles that you follow. Accountants, there's tax laws and whatever else. There's a lot of structure to it. Teacher, same type of thing, right? You got to be very planned and intentional. Management, you kind of have to have that same approach if you're leading with other folks. And the attorney, the law kind of governs a lot of things, right? So I thought that was really interesting. I didn't see doctor on that list. And most people think, oh, you're a doctor, you're completely wealthy, and they didn't make the top 5. So, but there is that intentionality, that automation, just that set it and forget it kind of mentality, and very process driven that leads to success, which takes a long time to get to. But I thought that was fairly interesting to be able to hear those careers and then attribute that to financial success.
Yeah. And it's staggering. Like, you look at the Millionaire Next Door and the Millionaire Mind books, where surveys done by several millionaires, and like a lot of those people have never bought a suit over $1,000. They've never had a Rolex. They've never had a home in a private neighborhood. Right?
They've never had a new car.
Yeah, exactly. They've never driven a brand new car. So a lot of these people have foregone some of the luxuries of life, but they have done extremely well, and they're millionaires because they just continue to do the same systems and processes over and over again. And it's not sexy advice. It's not super tantalizing by any means, but it does the job and it gets it done. Yep. So if you want to have peace and, as far as financials go, that's a great way to do it. But
well, it's funny to see that sometimes wealthy people are frugal people as well. And I think in order to be wealthy and stay wealthy, you kind of have to be frugal and make those decisions of not buying the newest car when it comes out, or not buying the nicest house, just even if you can, but choosing not to do that, and, saving your money for other things.
Yep.
And having that long game. So one thing that I wish I would have had a lot more insight into was home ownership when I was really young. I had a chance where I was making enough money right after high school where I could have bought a house, and then rode that through the big housing bubble and back, and actually been in a lot better situation. But I didn't have that investment mindset from my parents or anything else, where I wish I would have, because in hindsight I would have been way better off. But again, it's that long game. So I was chasing the material things short term and wanted to do whatever, but getting the long-term mentality, I guess I've become a lot more patient, and the years go by a lot quicker now. So it's easier to play that game. Yep. So, but I've had 38 cars in my life, so I've only had one new one myself. So,
okay.
Car flipper.
Yeah. Not rolling them, but yeah.
So let's leave you with some books. There's a few books that are just awesome that I've read that I think would be really good to look at. Rich Dad Poor Dad is awesome. Because you have to train your mind, right? Your mind has to be trained in thinking in a certain way to obey the laws of money. And these books really teach you what like how to use money as a tool to help you do what you want to do in life and have that financial peace. But Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Millionaire Mind is a great one. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill is amazing. The Richest Man in Babylon, both those last two were written in the 1920s. And then Dave Ramsey, Total Money Makeover. The Psychology of Money, I have not read yet. That's the only one on the list I haven't read, but everybody's talking about that book, The Psychology of Money. And then Millionaire Mindset was another one. So
Millionaire Next Door is another good one too.
Yeah, yep. Great one. So check out those books if you want to, keep going on this topic. There's so much more that we haven't covered here, but like I think we've hopefully sparked your interest if you haven't like really thought about digging deep into this and maybe changing some things you're doing to have a little more peace financially.
And if there's a certain area you want us to dive deeper into, go ahead and leave a comment and we can try and address that in a more condensed version there.
Yeah. And again, we're not like financial people by trade. We're real estate agents, right? So that's what we do. We help people with real estate, buying and selling homes. But the reason why we're talking about this stuff is because there is a lack of education on it, right? Like nobody taught this in school and nobody learned it. And so now so many people are Googling it and YouTubing it and trying to find out more and more, right? And that maybe is how you found us here. Right. And so there's a huge need for you to not only learn this stuff, but like teach other people about it. So we hope that you can share it with a friend and that sort of thing too. And if you get to the point where you're ready to buy your home and you've like eliminated some debt and you're super excited to talk to a lender and get that process started, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your success story and then get you started on your journey of homeownership as well. So awesome. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next episode. So if you have enjoyed what you're listening to and you'd like to hear more, make sure to press that subscribe button so that you can not miss out on any more episodes that are coming up. And also check out all of our contact information is below. You can see us at the dreamsmithteam.com to look up more information about our team and our history and all of the members of our team, and see contact information that you can reach us if you have any real estate needs. See you next time.